Chaos is ensuing between Jimmy Butler, the NBA, and the Miami Heat. I'm here to break down all of the new information that we have surrounding Jimmy Butler, the Miami Heat, and all of the trade speculation that has really surfaced in the last 24 to 48 hours. And I'm here to break it all down on this episode of Heat Digest. So let's not waste any time and break down all of the massive Jimmy Butler updates, as there are a bunch of them and they are massive. And now, Jimmy Butler, we have heard the speculation before. We have heard all of the news and all the drama before, going back to not only last offseason, but obviously in seasons prior. Are we going to trade Jimmy Butler? He's getting older. His age is expiring. His career is expiring. Are we going to move him now before we let him get to the free agency market this up and coming offseason, where he can then opt out of a contract and Miami can have him walk in free agency to any other team that is going to offer him enough money in a possible winning scenario where he'll be sufficient and want to play there, ending with Miami, one, not having Butler anymore, two, not being able to trade him for any goods or assets, and again, resulting in just flat out losing a star player after not getting the result we wanted after a handful of years here in Miami. Now, we've broken that all down before in multiple videos over the last handful of months, dating back to the offseason before this NBA season actually began. And now we are into this NBA season. Things are slowly but surely starting to get going for this Miami Heat team, as we've now won 3 in a row over notable NBA teams, whether from the East or the Western Conference. And now we're starting to get a bunch of brand new information that Jimmy apparently is open for trade from the Miami Heat. But is he really? I'm here to break it all down because, again, it sounds confusing and it really has come off as a bit confusing. Now, we're going to cite Shams as he posted this article on December 10th, which was 2 days ago, where he goes, brand new inside pass on ESPN. And he goes on to then say he'd open to listening to offers to Jimmy Butler. And then goes on to say Brandon Ingram, Pelicans navigate trade / extension routes. And then if you click on the picture with obviously Shams and then Brandon Ingram and Jimmy Butler in the photograph, it takes you to Shams' article, where he goes on to write as follows. Every trade deadline period, there are players who emerge as key figures to watch, those who could shift the balance of power in the NBA. This season, all eyes will be on Miami Heat 6-time All-Star Jimmy Butler and Pelicans 1-time All-Star Brandon Ingram. So now, initially planting the seeds in the opening paragraph of this article, how Jimmy Butler could be possibly up for trade based off the Miami Heat intel. And it gets better as he then posts this. And this goes on to say as it follows. The Heat are open to listening to offers for Butler and making a deal if the proposal is right, league sources told ESPN, and Butler's agent Bernie Lee has indicated in league circles that Butler is open to destinations such as 2 of the Texas teams, the Houston Rockets and the Dallas Mavericks, and the Golden State Warriors. Butler is a native of Houston. Above all, though, he is believed to prefer a win-now title contender in any trade. Teams have also been informed that Butler intends to opt out of his deal in the offseason and become a free agent, sources said. The Heat have hovered around the play-in tournament over the past 2 seasons, and with Butler's contractual status, they have been open-minded to trade inquiries. So again, back to the idea that we quickly broke down before reading this the last 2 quotes from Shams in this article, the idea that, again, Jimmy Butler is in his contract year. If he decides to opt in after this year, let me rephrase. After this year, Jimmy Butler will have a decision to make. He can either opt in or he can opt out. If he decides to opt in, he will play for the Miami Heat for 1 more season, which obviously will be next season, for $54 million. Again, his pay will then increase, I believe, from 52 to 54, if not 50 to 54, for that final year of his contract. If he opts out, which is obviously the other option, he will then test free agency, and he will cause a bidding war amongst the NBA and possible suitors that really think that they could enjoy or benefit from having Jimmy Butler a part of their organization, which would probably be the vast majority of NBA teams looking to contend for an NBA title, including the Miami Heat. But this is where things really go left, because we've seen this before in the past, whether, again, it be this past offseason, whether it be early stages of this NBA season, where it didn't really work for the Miami Heat. But again, like I mentioned earlier, we've won 3 games in a row over Cleveland, over the Phoenix Suns, over notable NBA teams, and now this is starting to happen. Now, Jimmy Butler hasn't been a 25, 10, and 5 guy, dominating like he does in the playoffs, But again, he's being a very sufficient and very effective player with this Miami Heat team, and he doesn't have to be a world beater. He's allowing players like Bam, Tyler Hero, Jaquez, and the list goes on to really develop and play extremely well and lead as a collective to victory. And with that, with all of this being said, we had more updates. Shams comes out yesterday and says the Phoenix Suns are another team that Jimmy Butler's agent Bernie Lee has indicated in league circles that the 6-time All-Star is open to as a destination while Miami listens to trade offers. Sources tell ESPN, joining Dallas, Houston, and Golden State. Now again, Dallas, Houston, and Golden State have all been involved with Jimmy Butler in the speculation in previous videos due to, obviously, Jimmy Butler being from Houston, him being from the state of Texas. Obviously, going back home would be something that we assume he would enjoy, playing with the Rockets team that is obviously loaded with young talent. Sengun is a phenomenal young center, as well as Green, Thompson, the list goes on. Dylan Brooks is currently playing there as the small forward. But again, that entire roster is very, very well put together. They have Steven Adams coming off the bench, as well as a bunch of others. And it is, again, just a very well and young, youthful team down in Houston that Jimmy Butler could obviously very much help, be a leader on that team. But again, is it something that we're actually going to see? And this is where the chaos really kicks off. And this is where, if you're a Miami Heat fan and a Jimmy Butler supporter on this Miami Heat team, this is where there's a bit of a woosah, a deep breath in and out, where you can just relax a little bit. Because, well, Bernie Lee, comes out and absolutely rips Shams Charania apart. And he's not going to deal with it anymore, it seems like. And that's simply what he tells Shams here, laying down the idea that this is all fabricated. This is ridiculous that you just continue to come out here and say this just fabricated information. And again, this is something that it's not something we expect from Shams by any means. But again, it is something that has happened before with just information getting lost. And because of that, they put it out there expecting it to be truthful. And it comes out that these agents are then backing them up. Now, is Shams putting out too much information for Bernard's liking or for Butler's liking, and he's trying to really cover up half of it? Or is he actually being truthful and saying this is fabricated? I'm going to go with the second option and say that he's simply just calling him on a lie or a stretch type of truth. And this is what Lee goes on the subtweet, the Phoenix Suns tweet from Shams, saying, all right, listen, I gave you a pass yesterday because I was busy, but if you don't stop putting my name on your complete and utter made-up bullshit, because you know you normally aren't worth my time to acknowledge. And it says continued, where he goes on to say, I don't know what I'm going to do because I'm a middle-aged dad, but just know it would indicate severe dislike. World, all this is fabricated. I have never, and honestly, it wouldn't help me or the position I represent to do anything that's been reported by said, quote, journalist. Lee did not waste any time. He did not waste any time to go on and say these things. Obviously, the one day went by because he was extremely busy, as he reported. But again, the idea that he was not wasting any time, he was not going to let another day, another report from Shams or anyone else come out, but really, in a sense, disrespecting him or Jimmy Butler in the Miami Heat organization. And then finally, he goes on to say this, again, Bernard Lee saying this about Shams. Shams, this is your opportunity to say, my bad, and quote, I let ChatGPT write my tweets, and it went old school Peter Verse. End of quote. Shams Peter was a writer in the 90s. Be a trendsetter. Invent the new I was hacked. Carry on all. Thank you. And again, these are all subtweeting the original Shams tweet where he posted that the Phoenix Suns may be involved with Jimmy Butler as well. And again, this doesn't even really make sense because if you look at the Phoenix Suns roster and the Miami Heat roster, none of the contract situations could work. Durant, Booker, Beal, Nurkic, these guys all have an absorbent amount of money going towards them in contracts. Jimmy Butler is obviously being paid very, very well, and obviously for obvious reasons. But again, this is just utter chaos. And the fact that now we have Jimmy Butler's agent coming out and speaking out and calling Shams just flat out crazy and just basically a liar, saying that everything he was saying was fabricated. And again, this is just craziness. And then Shams went on NBA Today, which was last night, and he doubled down. He actually doubled down. Now, Evan Sittery, I apologize if I'm saying that incorrectly, goes on the quote, or not quote, but tag Shams and say, with the latest on the Suns being added as a potential trade destination for Jimmy Butler, saying Phoenix joins the Dallas, Houston, and the Warriors as teams Butler would be open to playing for. Going on to say, Shams says, keep a quote, very close eye, end of quote, on the Suns as a real suitor for Butler. Bradley Beal would have to be included in Phoenix in a potential trade for a blockbuster trade with Jimmy Butler. And then Bernard Lee, Butler's agent, has refused Shams' reports, but he's just doubled down live on ESPN with this intel. So once again, we had all of the chaos. We had these tweets from Shams. We had this from Shams on December 10th. Then this last night on December 11th. And then, again, Bernard Lee quickly jumping on him immediately following this. Not only with that tweet, but with this one. And then this one. And then Shams goes on NBA Today and NBA Tonight. And then says this and doubles down on his Phoenix Sun comments. Where then we get Brian Windhorst on ESPN, where he goes on and says, again, this was yesterday morning, just another NBA insider giving an idea that says the Golden State Warriors are targeting LeBron James and Jimmy Butler. Again, this is from Brian Windhorst on ESPN. That's his Twitter account, but he did say this on Get Up ESPN yesterday morning. So absolute chaos is ensuing over not only Jimmy Butler, but it seems like the entirety of the NBA world as this NBA trade deadline is quickly approaching. And I will say one of the biggest pieces that I forgot to mention in the midst of saying all of this chaos is, if you can notice at the top of this tweet where Bernard Lee's actual username is at the top left and over here next to his profile picture, just above that username, it says a name. It says Mickey Arison has retweeted this. And if that doesn't mean anything to you, he's one of the owners of the Miami Heat, and he's a very, very large piece of this Miami Heat organization behind closed doors in the front office area of the things. So the fact that he is retweeting this as well, and again, this is not Shams' tweet. This is Shams' tweet subtweeted by Bernard Lee, the agent of Jimmy Butler, where he was flat out telling him, this is the first one, where he told him this is all fabricated. I didn't have time yesterday, but now I have time, and this is bullshit. And again, this as a Miami Heat fan and a Jimmy Butler fan, someone who supports the idea of Butler maintaining a position on this Miami Heat team for at least the entirety of this season, I love to see this. I love the fact that the Heat aren't scared to come out and say, what are you talking about? Who gave you this information? Why would you put this out publicly? I'm the agent. You putting this out publicly does not help me, Butler, or any of the situations going on if this were to be true. And with that, this is all fabricated bullshit. So I'm a fan of that. I think if Jimmy Butler was going to be traded, it should have been done in the offseason for multiple reasons, but the most important and highlighted one is the fact that look at the roster we currently have, led by Tyler Hero, Bam Adebayo, and a bunch of really, really good role players that aren't considered stars really anywhere else, excluding the two players I just named and Jimmy Butler. Now, with that, if we were to move Jimmy Butler right now, or any time from now, which again, it's December 12th, up until January, early February, approaching that NBA trade deadline, this Heat team would not have a significant chance to make the playoffs because we're not going to trade star for star. The most high-level player we are going to be able to get back in a trade, hypothetically, would be Bradley Beal. And that Bradley Beal being added to this Miami Heat team is not going to propel us to an NBA championship team. As of right now, I think this is the best opportunity as of currently constructed with what we could construct this season. Leave it as is. If you're going to make a move, trade or don't trade. You can't trade Jimmy after the trade deadline, obviously, as he can either walk or opt in. Hope that he opts in, possibly move him then in the offseason to redevelop and regroup, not in the middle of an NBA season where you're attempting not to be a play-in team for the third straight year. Again, it would be chaotic and idiotic to move Jimmy Butler in the middle of the season. It would just be entirely chaos for this Miami Heat team and really the other possible suitor, whether it be the Warriors, the Mavericks, or the Houston Rockets. I can't wait to see how it all plays out. I don't believe Butler will be moved this season. Maybe next season if he opts in to the Miami Heat contract. But again, that is an entirety of an update for you guys on Jimmy Butler and really all of the moving parts involving Jimmy Butler and the possibility of him being traded this season. So thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys on the next episode of Heat Digest.